Netero. Isaac Netero versus Zeno Zoldyck. Two old men from Hunter x Hunter. People know about both of them coming in during the Chimera Ant arc to help with the extermination of the ants. Because it was, one of those things. Zeno Zoldyck is retired, but he still does his fucking job. He used to be the head of the family, but he still helps his son out on missions because he's still alive and he's still breathing. But it's still understood that this guy is not what he used to be in his prime. Now, we don't know how he was when he was in his prime, but we know as an old man, he was able to fight against Crollo Lucifer, with his son, though. He needed, he needed his son's help. He thought that he could beat Crollo, but then he remembered that, with those conditions, and had they fought longer, he probably would have, figured it out. And I say that to say that Zeno Zoldyck, he's a good fighter. He's fighting against top tier characters. But Isaac Netero took on the beast himself, the real menace to humanity in the Hunterverse, right? That being Meruem, the king of the ants. They were gonna eradicate humans. They were gonna stockpile humans and eat them for dinner. And he said, "Fuck that. I'm gonna step up and I'll put my life on the line because this is a fight that is going to push me to do better." He's still, even in his old ass age of 100 and something, he's looking for an opponent who's stronger than he is so he can overcome that and put his all out there. He's that kind of fighter in person. He wanted to, protect the other people too. Zeno was called to action too because, he understood that, Netero was, older in age and wasn't his, and Netero understood that he wasn't either, but he's like, together we can probably combat this threat. However, Zeno just, he distracted Chitu so his son could come in and, basically I'm hitting at before I give you what I, want to say, before I say it, but I think because I told you too, I don't know if I did or not, but the Green Angel's favorite Hunter character is actually Isaac Netero. So, and that's not even why, but I'm running down why things happen. Strength goes to Netero. 100 type Guan Yin, it was Zeno who said that, you better watch out for the 100 type Guan Yin. You have to watch out for that because he knows the power, the strength in that attack, in that fighting style, what it took, great discipline, great strength, consistency, and consistency is strength. He had staying power to live that long, and he wasn't just sitting down. This wasn't just a guy who was just sitting down for 100 years. No, this guy was putting in the fucking work. He was doing shit. He was the strongest hunter for the longest time, and he still was, even in his old age, was still in the top 5. I would say, personally, I would say he's in the top 5. Physical strength still Isaac Netero, and Zeno's not weak. It's actually kind of close, but we're giving strength to Netero. Speed, on the other hand, we're giving that shit to Zeno. Zeno is quick. We've seen what he did against Crollo. He was able to run up on him, pin him down, so his son could, hit him with the attack. And he got out of the way when he was he's like, hit him now, don't worry about me. He told his son that, he told Silva that he could get out of the way, basically. He's like, even if it, hits me, but it won't because he's quick. Even as an old man, he's quick, and Isaac Netero, we were fighting against Meruem. Meruem's fast, but, I'm just saying, he ain't as fast as what he was in his prime. If it was prime Netero, sure, but this is an old man who's 110, so he's not as fast. Durability. I was thinking about this and I was like, who would like crack under pressure quicker? Like who would get their bones broken? Like that type of thing, who would show, more damage being done to their bodies. And I'm saying Zeno. When you're fast, you're usually fast for a reason because you can't take damage as much, you know? And that's how it is. That's how I came to the conclusion that Isaac Netero was stronger. He would be more willing to like, stand there and take it and like not be affected by said attack. I know we were fighting against Merowim, but Merowim's like the most powerful creature in that verse, as far as, the anime knows. And as far as I know too, because I don't read the manga. And we don't do that here. Not yet. We ain't doing that yet. So we give the durability to Netero with the same, we're giving endurance to Netero. Because like Zeno wasn't in like any long drawn out fights. For what we've seen, he wasn't fighting anybody for too long. Netero, that fight with Meruem wasn't short. It was actually kind of long, drawn out. This old man was fighting through pain as well. He had his arm taken. He had his fucking leg taken, and he was still under type Guanyin, and like he had, now he had to use certain moves, and he did and eventually die, but it took a while to put him down. He wanted to endure. He wanted to fight as long as he could, even on one leg, even with one arm. He was like, I'm seeing this fight through to the end. I'm putting everything, because he knew he was going to die. And he was like, I have to do it. This is who I am. You know, Intelligence goes to Zeno. Zeno Zoldyck, he prioritizes safety. But it ain't just that though. He prioritizes, killing people. We don't have to be upfront about what we do. We are assassins, so we can come in here and we can, kill this guy without him even knowing. We know our opponents to be these type of people. He knows about his targets and shit. He don't just go into it. This man's not a dumbass. To lead a family, you kind of have to be smart. Now, Isaac Netero is a chairman, and he ran a dojo for a little bit, but I'm just saying I know that Zeno does think a little more than he does. Because Netero's confident in his strength. As I was saying before, he's not going to, Netero's going to just, put his head out there, He's going to take damage. Whereas Zeno's going to be like, no, I'm going to back off. And, like, I don't know how powerful that attack is, I ain't going to use myself as the, punching bag. He's going to do shit like that. So I say he's a little smarter. But the experience goes to Netero. And because Netero has more experience in doing martial arts and everything else, he's more confident. And he has more experience than Zeno by a lot. Even though Zeno's, old, but he's like old too, 67 and like 100 and come on now. Who has more wisdom. Close skills go to. You're going to be surprised, but I said Zeno. I said Zeno because he's a guy who likes to get up close and personal when he kills somebody. I said that about him before, right? Where he ain't gonna like take attacks head on. But that don't mean he ain't gonna run up on you. Like he ain't gonna not run up on you to kill you. He has some range attacks too, but I think he's more effective in those close quarters attacks, actually. And that's just me. Now, I was gonna give it to Netero. Then I was like, Netero uses 100 type Guanyin. That's a range attack. Because that was not his hands. Those are his hands. But that's the statue of the Bodhisattva. He's controlling every single one from a distance. he won't take any damage. See, in a close quarters combat, right, you got the chance of getting hit too. Zeno's more likely to do shit like that, but he's gonna go on with the plan. That's why he's smart, you know. And Netero does too, but he's kind of more simple with his plan. I am strong. I've done this, and I'm consistent with it. So I'm gonna, persevere, like I always have, that type of thing. Where Zeno's like, my opponent does this, my opponent does that, and Netero does too, but Zeno's no different. He knows this shit too. He's a strategist. Um, Why did I say? I said close skills go to Zeno, but you could give it to Netero too. Don't get it fucked up now. Like if you think Netero has the close skills, I ain't getting mad at you because he did do martial arts for you know goddamn a long ass time. You know, I'm just saying that Zeno, because he's an assassin, he has to get up close to kill his people most of the time. And in this kind of battle, he's gonna need to get up close to kill Netero. Range skills go to Netero though. The power of the 100 type Guan Yin Bodhisattva is more powerful than any of the, like, that dragon thing that he fucking does, dragon drive and all that shit that Zeno has. That's long range attack. The 100 type Guan Yin can stand up to that shit. And then we got the recoup. We're gonna have Zeno at recoup. Damn, he's just younger and he could, he has better, recoup abilities. I mean, he's still alive. Netero dead. You know, I understand opponents and other things, y'all, but this is between these two old men. I don't think if he took attacks from, like, powerful attacks from Zeno, which, don't get it confused now. Don't get it fucked up. I'm just saying, if he took a lot of damage, enough damage to, like, end up hospitalized and shit during this fight, he's not gonna recover from that. Like, he might end up dying. Whereas Zeno, if he took damage and ended up winning the battle, right, he is gonna live on, longer. I just see him recovering better. Hacks for Netero, 100 type Guan Yin, more years of experience in the martial arts. Now Zeno has the assassination arts techniques. He has immunity to poisons and other things too. He has that dragon drive. Netero's is just better. Like, he's ran martial arts dojos. He's then graduated to being the hunter chairman, and he was like the strongest hunter for the longest too. And then he just has more feats. More powerful feats. He almost defeated Merowyn. The only reason it didn't end in a draw was because his royal guards came to save him. That's what people overlook. Merowyn would have lost that fucking fight. Like, it would have been a draw. Both KO'd, both fucking dead. But his royal guards came to his rescue. That's what saved Merowyn. It wasn't Merowyn himself. And then I said they were fighting at the Zoldyck estate, right? So Zeno has the advantage there. He knows how, his estates ran and the grounds that he stands on. But I say all that to say that 6 out of 5 will go to, Netero 6, 5 for the old man Zeno. But Netero wins high diff, and it's because he's an old man. If he's primed up and then, Zeno's still the same, I didn't want to do that in this video, but Netero wins, and Netero does win. Netero is just more refined in his skills. He's been consistent with what he's done for like a long time. Like, Zeno said when he was born, he was old. Like, he was already he was already in the dojos teaching people about undertype Guan Yin when Zeno was a baby, and all he was doing since then was improving upon that, to the greatest degrees he could. Even when his body started to deteriorate and other things, he was still locked in like that. Zeno don't got that type of like, he don't have it like that. He don't have that type of consistency, but he knows how to do his job. I'll say that about Zeno. He knows how to kill people when he's on a mission. But if he was sent to kill, Netero and him had to fight like that, Netero's gonna win. 9 times out of 10. But be cool on the corner, you know, and let me know who you think wins out of Zeno and Isaac Netero.